3 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. A Soviet submarine carrying nuclear missiles, 98 dead sailors, and the most audacious theft in history. In 1974, the CIA attempted the impossible. Secretly lift a 3,000-ton submarine from the ocean floor using a giant mechanical claw, all while Soviet spy ships watched from less than a mile away. This is Project Azorian, the $800 million gamble that changed everything. March 8, 1968, the Soviet ballistic missile submarine K-129 vanishes in the North Pacific. 98 sailors, 3 nuclear missiles, gone without a trace. The submarine had departed from Petropavlovsk on a routine combat patrol. Captain Vladimir Kobzar commanded the vessel, a Golf II-class boat carrying enough firepower to devastate 3 American cities. Then silence. The Soviets launched their largest naval search in history. Dozens of ships and aircraft scoured the Pacific for weeks. They found nothing. But someone else was listening. Deep beneath the ocean, a network of American hydrophones called SOSUS had recorded everything. 3 internal explosions. Then the unmistakable sound of a submarine imploding under catastrophic pressure. American intelligence analysts triangulated the acoustic signals. They pinpointed the wreck site, 16,500 feet below the surface, roughly 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii. The depth was staggering. The Titanic rested at 12,500 feet. K-129 lay 3,000 feet deeper, in waters no salvage operation had ever reached. But the prize was irresistible. Soviet nuclear warheads, cryptographic equipment, codebooks, the submarine's own nuclear reactor. Everything Moscow had fought to keep secret now lay in international waters, beyond Soviet reach. The only question was whether anyone could actually retrieve it. CIA Director Richard Helms presented the opportunity to President Nixon. The intelligence value was incalculable. But so were the risks. If the Soviets discovered America was stealing their submarine, the diplomatic consequences would be catastrophic. The mission had to be completely invisible. No military ships, no obvious government involvement. And somehow the entire operation had to happen in plain sight. Nixon authorized the mission with one condition: find a way to do this without anyone knowing the United States government was involved. The solution came from an unlikely source, a reclusive billionaire who hadn't been seen in public for over a decade: Howard Hughes. Howard Hughes was the ideal front man. His reputation for eccentric, secretive ventures meant nobody questioned his strange projects. Hughes agreed to lend his name and company to the operation. The cover story, Deep Sea Mining. His company would build a revolutionary ship to harvest manganese nodules from the ocean floor, a legitimate emerging industry that perfectly explained the ship's unusual design. The CIA funneled over $350 million through Hughes's companies. Engineers from Lockheed, Global Marine, and Western Gear began designing something the world had never seen. They called the ship Hughes Glomar Explorer, 618 feet long, 50,000 tons. And hiding at its center a secret that would remain classified for decades. The Glomar Explorer was a marvel of Cold War engineering. At its heart was the moon pool, a massive opening in the center of the ship, 199 feet long and 42 feet wide. Through this opening, crews would lower a string of pipes section by section, each pair 30 feet long, until they reached the ocean floor 3 miles below. At the bottom would hang the mission's secret weapon. They called it Clementine, a giant mechanical claw 200 feet long, 50 feet wide, and weighing over 600 tons. Its hydraulic jaws could grip and lift up to 2,000 tons. The claw was built in a separate submersible barge called HMB-1. When complete, the barge would submerge, float beneath the Glomar Explorer, and transfer Clementine into the moon pool. All of this underwater, invisible to satellites and spy planes. The deep-sea mining cover story proved surprisingly effective. Hughes announced his venture to the press, and the media ate it up. Journalists wrote enthusiastic articles about the future of ocean mining. Investors inquired about stock opportunities. Other companies began exploring the technology. The Soviet Union monitored American ship movements constantly, but the Glomar Explorer's mining equipment seemed legitimate. Its massive derrick, heavy lift systems, and unusual design all made sense for seafloor extraction. By 1974, after 2 years of construction and testing, the ship was ready. The capture vehicle was loaded, and the CIA prepared to attempt something never done before or since. June 1974. President Nixon was attending a summit in Moscow with Soviet Premier Brezhnev. The timing was deliberate. Nixon personally approved the launch, with one stipulation: wait until he left Soviet territory. If the operation was discovered while he stood on Russian soil, the diplomatic fallout would be unimaginable. On July 4, 1974, the day after Nixon departed Moscow, the Glomar Explorer arrived at the recovery site. Independence Day. American flags flew from the mast as the ship positioned itself directly above the shattered remains of K-129. 3 miles below, 98 Soviet sailors lay entombed in their steel coffin. And above them, 178 American crew members prepared to disturb their graves. The operation required absolute precision. The Glomar Explorer had to remain perfectly stationary above a fixed point on the ocean floor, 16,500 feet below. Any drift would snap the pipe string like a thread. The ship's dynamic positioning system, cutting-edge technology for its time, used thrusters to hold position against currents and waves. Section by section, the crew lowered the pipe string. 30-foot segments, bolted together pair by pair, descending hour after hour into the abyss. The process took days. Finally, cameras on the capture vehicle transmitted the first images. There it was, K-129, broken but intact, the forward section where the missiles and codes lay waiting. The Glomar Explorer was not alone. Soviet intelligence had dispatched surveillance vessels to monitor the mysterious American ship. A Soviet tug, the SB-10, maintained a constant presence less than a mile away. Its crew photographed everything on deck, tracked every movement, and reported back to Moscow. The Americans knew they were being watched. Every action on deck had to support the mining cover story. Crew members staged fake equipment tests and performed meaningless tasks for the benefit of Soviet cameras. Below deck, in spaces the Soviets couldn't see, the real work continued. The pipe string descended deeper. The capture vehicle approached its target, and the most dangerous phase of the operation was about to begin. After weeks of positioning, Clementine reached the ocean floor. The capture vehicle's cameras revealed K-129 in ghostly detail. Hull breached, sail collapsed, the remains of a catastrophic implosion frozen in time. Operators 3 miles above carefully maneuvered the claw toward the submarine's forward section. 138 feet of hull containing the missile compartment, the code room, and 2 nuclear torpedoes. The hydraulic arms extended, steel fingers the size of tree trunks wrapped around the submarine's remains. Pressure sensors confirmed a solid grip. At mission control aboard the Glomar Explorer, the command was given: begin the lift. For the first time in history, humans would attempt to raise a vessel from this depth. The ascent was agonizingly slow, 17,000 tons of tension on the pipe string. Every wave, every gust of wind transmitted force down 3 miles of steel. The drawworks groaned as pair after pair of pipes was disconnected and stored. Each segment brought the Soviet submarine slightly closer to the surface, inch by inch, hour by hour, day after day. The captured hull weighed nearly 2,000 tons. Add the weight of the claw itself, the pipes, the water pressure, and the dynamic forces of the lift. The engineering margins were razor thin. Soviet surveillance ships continued circling. The crew maintained their mining charade, and deep below, Clementine's grip held firm against pressures that would crush a human being to the size of a soda can. The submarine was halfway up, 8,000 feet to the surface. Then disaster struck. A section of Clementine's grasping arm failed. Metallurgical stress, possibly a manufacturing defect, caused one of the fingers to crack and release. The captured hull shifted. Then it began to break apart. 100 feet of submarine, including the sail and the critical missile compartment, tore free from Clementine's grip. Operators watched helplessly on their monitors as 2/3 of the prize tumbled back into the abyss. The nuclear missiles, the cryptographic equipment, the majority of what they'd come to steal, gone, falling 3 miles back to the ocean floor. The crew hauled up what remained, only 38 feet of the submarine's bow section, a fraction of what they'd hoped to recover, but it wasn't nothing. Inside the recovered section, investigators found 2 nuclear-tipped torpedoes, some cryptographic machines, navigation equipment, and the remains of 6 Soviet sailors. The bodies were badly decomposed after 6 years on the ocean floor, but they were intact enough to identify Soviet sons, brothers, and husbands who had vanished without explanation. The CIA made a remarkable decision. They would give these men a proper burial at sea, with full military honors, in accordance with Soviet naval tradition. September 1974, 90 nautical miles southwest of Hawaii. The crew of the Glomar Explorer gathered on deck for a ceremony unlike any in military history. 6 Soviet sailors were laid to rest in a steel chamber. An American naval officer read a burial service in Russian. The Soviet anthem played. The American crew saluted. The entire ceremony was filmed, a gesture of respect that would remain secret for nearly 2 decades. In 1992, CIA Director Robert Gates traveled to Moscow and personally presented the videotape to Russian President Boris Yeltsin. For the families who had wondered for years what happened to their fathers and husbands, it was the first confirmation they would ever receive. The CIA believed their secret was safe, but 4 months before the mission even launched, fate had intervened. In June 1974, burglars broke into a Hughes Company office in Los Angeles. They stole documents, cash, and a memo that connected Howard Hughes to the CIA and the Glomar Explorer. Desperate to recover the evidence, the CIA enlisted the FBI, who brought in the Los Angeles Police Department. The investigation drew attention. Journalists began asking questions. By autumn 1974, rumors were spreading. Something strange had happened in the Pacific, something involving Hughes, the CIA, and a Soviet submarine. The press was closing in. February 1975, the Los Angeles Times published the story. Project Jennifer, they called it, using the wrong codename. But the details were accurate enough. The CIA had tried to steal a Soviet submarine. Other newspapers followed. The New York Times, the Washington Post. Within days, the world knew America had attempted the most audacious intelligence operation of the Cold War. When journalists demanded answers, the CIA crafted a response that would become legendary. "We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of information responsive to your request." The phrase entered the English language. The Glomar response. A way of acknowledging nothing while denying nothing. It remains CIA policy to this day. Moscow was furious. The Americans had attempted to steal Soviet military secrets from what the Kremlin considered a war grave. The Soviet government issued formal protests. They demanded the return of any recovered materials and the bodies of their sailors. American officials deflected, neither confirming the operation nor providing details. But privately, Soviet intelligence was humiliated. For 6 years, they had searched for K-129 and failed. The Americans had not only found it, but had nearly succeeded in stealing it from under their noses. The diplomatic fallout was significant but contained. Both superpowers had too much to lose by escalating. The Cold War demanded careful management of even the most provocative incidents. Did Project Azorian succeed? The CIA's own assessment was mixed. The primary objectives, the nuclear missiles and cryptographic equipment, were lost with the main hull section. But the recovered torpedoes provided valuable insights into Soviet nuclear weapon design. The navigation equipment revealed Soviet submarine patrol patterns, and the operation itself proved that deep ocean recovery was possible. The $800 million price tag, over $5 billion in today's money, made Azorian one of the most expensive intelligence operations in history. Critics argued the partial success didn't justify the cost. supporters countered that the intelligence value was immeasurable, and that the engineering breakthroughs would benefit America for decades to come. The Glomar Explorer itself had a long second life. After the mission's exposure ended any possibility of repeat operations, the ship was converted for legitimate deep-sea drilling. The engineering innovations pioneered for Project Azorian, dynamic positioning, deep-water heavy lift, precision recovery systems became foundations of the offshore oil industry and modern marine salvage. The techniques developed to raise K-129 would later be used for everything from recovering airplane black boxes to exploring the Titanic. The CIA's impossible mission had accidentally revolutionized ocean engineering. In 2015, the Glomar Explorer was finally scrapped after 40 years of service. But its legacy lives on in every deep-water operation conducted today. K-129 still lies on the Pacific floor. The main hull section that broke away during the lift remains where it fell in 1974, even deeper than before. The wreckage is considered a war grave by both nations. No recovery operations have been attempted since Azorian. The submarine's nuclear missiles, whatever remains of them, rest 3 miles beneath the waves. 92 Soviet sailors still lie entombed in that darkness. Only 6 were ever recovered. The rest remain with their ship, frozen in the moment of their deaths over 50 years ago. In Russia, the families finally received official acknowledgement of the loss in 1998, 3 decades after K-129 vanished. For most, it was the only closure they would ever receive. Project Azorian represents everything about the Cold War: the technological ambition, the astronomical costs, the willingness to attempt the impossible in pursuit of advantage. It was simultaneously a triumph of engineering and an intelligence failure. A diplomatic disaster that both sides quietly buried. A grave robbery conducted with military honors. The men who built the Glomar Explorer, designed Clementine, and executed the mission remain largely anonymous. Most have never spoken publicly. Their achievement and their failure happened in secrecy and stayed that way. 3 miles below the Pacific, K-129 keeps its remaining secrets: 92 sailors, nuclear missiles, and the answers to questions we may never fully understand. The deepest mystery of the Cold War, still unsolved, still waiting.